Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I want to introduce myself again in case you're new to the channel. My name is Heather Falls, and I'm a business strategist in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I focus on helping mom business owners and entrepreneurs grow their business with sales and marketing and business planning. So what I would like to do is introduce you to my special guest here today, which is JJ Lane. Hi, JJ.
Hi.
So glad you were able to join, especially this time of the year with the start of the year and everything being so busy. I know that sometimes our schedules get really hectic this time of year. So for those of you watching, JJ was born and raised in Springfield, Illinois. She currently lives in St. Louis with her husband, 3 sons, a cat, and a dog. She has been running her small business, Be Lovely Photography, for almost 17 years. Her business pretty much equally divides into photographing families, branding, special events, and weddings and bar mitzvahs. So I'm going to kind of hand it over to JJ and let her introduce herself a little bit more and talk about what her business does.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be part of this community. Like Heather said, I've been photographing for about 17 years. I was a little bit of a late college. I went to college for a long time. It took me a long time to decide what I wanted to do. And so it was actually the last semester I was at community college. They were like, you're done. You've taken everything. Please go. You have your associates, move on. And I decided to take one more elective. And at the time it was film photography. So I got to learn how to develop film and be in a lab. And I just fell in love with it instantly. So my now husband and I moved to New Mexico, and I continued to study there. We moved back to St. Louis because my brother was having babies and I just wanted to be close to family. And in the meantime, I started working in a studio. I learned all about studio lighting and studio photography. Once I got married and started having kids, the type of photography I was doing was very like independent art oriented. I would go just do my own personal projects, and I wasn't really making a lot of money on my own. I always kind of had the mindset that I would do something else and do photography on the side. But once I had a degree in it, I was like, oh, I really have to like make this work. And then once I started having kids, I would kind of start to get my business going, and then I'd have another baby, and then I'd get my business going, then I'd have another baby. So I kept having these like really lovely little, rises in my business. And then I'd have these dips where I'd stay home and nurse and, take care of my kids, and then I'd build it back up. And then, so between my second and third kid, because my third is what they call the surprise bonus baby, there's a big gap. And so in that big gap of 6 years, I really built my business up. I worked on getting my name out there. It starts with your inner circle. You photograph the people you know, and you practice there, and then you go a little bigger until I started doing events. And then when I started shooting events, it was kind of the same way. I started working with other photographers, but in the meantime, I was still doing the family stuff and just living in the same neighborhood in St. Louis for 20 years. I had a really big circle of people that knew me and knew my reputation. So that was really important for me in building my business, is kind of making those connections with people, right, and just kind of putting myself out there. I did a ton of volunteer photography. I gift photo sessions for like school trivia nights and nonprofits, and it was great. It really built my name up there. It just didn't pay the bills, so I had to kind of slowly ease out of doing a lot of that. I still do donate some services, but I was doing a lot. Like my tech guy was like, listen, this is great, we love you. We love that you're doing this, but like you have a lot of tech.
Stop.
Yeah, you have to make. So I ended up having my third baby right kind of at the peak of like, I was at the busiest I'd ever been. And I realized that I couldn't really stop. So his babyhood was a little different than the other two, but that's okay. He doesn't care. He doesn't remember. But yeah, so it kind of works well now. I realized that as an entrepreneur for so long that I get to make my own schedule in a way. I get to, as we all know, as entrepreneurs, you have to then learn when to take time off. And so I'm working on boundaries. That's been a goal of mine for the past couple of years, post-COVID, I should say, even though we're still in COVID, but you know what I mean? Like once everything shut down, everything shut down. But I've learned to schedule out time off. I put it on my calendar. But yeah, it's been an interesting road, I will say. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
I bet, man, that's a great story. So you talked a little bit about juggling motherhood and, having babies and growing your business and the struggles that brought you. What did that look like in terms? I know you mentioned that you had to kind of take a step back and like figure out how to like prioritize. What did that look like for you? How did you really figure out what to prioritize in your business and how to mix in your family and, well, I guess really it should be prioritizing your family and mixing in your business and the things that you love to do, right? How did you figure out how to do that? Was it trial and error?
Yeah, a lot of ups and downs and doing it wrong. I think I got to the point of burnout really bad. I was doing probably 25 to 30 weddings a year, which weddings are maybe, let's say 6 to 10 hours of a day that you're actually working, but it's a lot of prep and it's a lot of post-production.
Yeah.
So I was doing a lot of weekends, double headers, triple headers. I worked with a lot of other photographers. So I would shoot weddings with them. They would shoot weddings with me. I was gone all weekends. And so I realized once my kids, my 2 older kids were in elementary school, and then my little guy was getting into preschool. So not that long ago, I realized they actually thought that dad didn't work and that I was always gone, because I would work nights and weekends. I would book photo shoots in the evenings on weekdays, and then I'd be gone all weekend. And when my middle kid had said, he had made a comment like, well, dad doesn't even work. You're the one gone all the time. I was just like, whoa, he really thinks that I am, dad's the sole breadwinner. I am like the supplementary income. I realized that I needed to make a shift. So that's kind of when, I started incorporating boundaries. I started taking less weddings, because if I do a family session, it's maybe only 45 minutes to an hour of my time. And I can do a couple and still be home, when they get up and when they go to bed.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I have to be there all the time. It just felt like that was a kind of kick in my butt of like, oh, he really thinks like I'm just gone all the time, and that Dave is magically home. My husband is magically home when they're home. And it just works out that way because he's got a normal Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
Yeah. In reality, there's so many families that are juggling work like that. The man is working in the evenings and the mom is having to work during the day. Whatever that schedule looks like for them, we're all having to try to figure out, what do we want our life to look like, and how do we prioritize the most important things to us, because we're all different, right? We all have different priorities. I'm glad that you mentioned that you had to, kind of take a step back. I can understand and see how difficult that was for him to say that.
And he just kind of said it. He probably didn't even know he was like, for me, like, oh no. But honestly, I was getting really burned out on weddings. Are just so emotionally and physically draining. And I'm 40, I just turned 45. So I had been doing this for so long that I was like, I think I can. And then I had actually made my schedule this way right before COVID hit, and everything shut down. I had kind of eased off booking weddings and really dove into booking more big weekday corporate events, because those are kind of happen during a normal weekday, and trying to get those weekends off. And then I started scheduling time off on my calendar, on my phone. I would just pick some dates and just be like, off, don't book. And then when someone has an inquiry for me, I look at the calendar and I don't falter with it. I don't change. If it says don't book off, it means I was probably really busy for 3 weeks leading up to that. And I knew, because that's what would happen is I'd be in fall season. So like August through November, December is my busiest time of the year. And I wouldn't take any time off. So I wouldn't schedule any time. So I would just, yes. That's because right after that is the slow season. So like we as entrepreneurs have a hard time saying no, because we just are constantly looking for that next. If I say no now, I'll never get that work again. It'll never come back to me. So I started to do that. And then when COVID hit, all bets were off. All my weddings got canceled. All the events got canceled. And so it was a good 7 months of panic about what to do next. And then of course it did slowly come back. And once everybody kind of started doing events and things again, it ramped up more than it had the year before, which was my busiest, most profitable year, the year before COVID. So it was kind of a sign to me, like, it's okay. It's okay to raise your prices and to set boundaries on what you want to do. It's okay to prioritize, like you said, whatever you want. I mean, my work is a really high priority, but it's not number one. I'm number one. And if I'm falling apart, everything below me is going to fall apart. So I had to really say, And I'm still working on like an active schedule that I follow through the week. I don't quite have that down, but I definitely have a strong priority to have time off during the weekends if possible. There are definitely some weekends where I know I'm going to work. I make it a really high priority to work out. I have ADHD. I'm very hyperactive, so I have to like burn out my energy. So I put myself really high on the, what makes me satisfied list. And then I really try to have like off days, which are very hard for me to have, like rest days where I do nothing and I lounge around and I feel zero guilt about it. Those are hard, but I'm working on it. It's a goal, it's on the to-do list.
Yeah. Well, that's what I want our audience to understand too. Like, start normalizing putting yourself first, because like you said, if you burn out and then everything that you take care of falls apart, and we can't have that, and it's completely normal for you to block off those times in your calendar when you don't need to do a specific task for work or do specific client work, or in your case, work on actually taking photography photos. I just want moms to understand, like, this is normal. We all have a battle that we're facing where we're struggling to, take care of our family, struggling to grow our business, struggling to prioritize. Like, how do we know what to prioritize? And the only way that we really know how to is if we know what we want our business and our life to look like, right? Yeah. So that's why I always talk to my clients about, creating that 10-year plan and then working backwards to create that 3-year and 1-year plan. And so if you could rent a time machine and go back in time and tell your younger self, like maybe when you just started your business, what would you go back and tell yourself?
Back and tell myself to get a business degree, do more entrepreneur classes and mentorships. Definitely, it's where I lack in skill sets. I feel very crafty. I feel very like I have a very good eye. I'm technically savvy with my gear and with lighting. I have really strong people skills. I have the art down. It's the business that I struggle with. So I think in the first 6 months, I learned more about what I needed to do to run a business than I had at school. At school back then, especially, like I said, it was film photography. So it was very process oriented, art oriented, which is great. It's part of the process, but they did not stress the business aspect of it enough. And it's something that I'm still working on at 17 years later. I keep paper receipts still. I do a lot of stuff old school because it's like dug into me so far. So I would definitely tell myself, take more business classes. And I still can, like, I'm still fully capable of doing that as an adult. And that's no big deal. We have a lot of resources for women already in business. It's an embarrassing amount of things that I don't do correctly. But that's okay. It's, we all are successful in our own ways. I always say that in my craft, it's really hard to find someone who's really strong in both. You usually get a really creative person who's terrible at the business, or a really great business person that maybe not so strong in the photography area. There are people who have balanced both. But I think for me personally, it's a little lopsided. So I would definitely tell myself, more business classes, and like you said, writing out like business plans and things to follow, and really prioritizing boundaries. I think as business owners, we just feel like we can be walked all over for financial purposes. We get just sucked dry. And I learned a lot of lessons over time in that aspect of like what I need to stop doing, saying no, not taking clients that don't fit you or what your vision is. I still have a few of those, and I considered a lesson in how to deal with people that maybe aren't the best fit for me, but they still come back to me because they like what I do. And, those are important lessons too. But yeah, I think that's what I would tell myself.
Yeah, that's really huge. I mean, not everybody is our ideal client, right? And not everything that we have to do for our business is our zone of genius. So that's definitely some great advice that you shared just now. What about tips for other mom business owners, other women who are juggling their family and their business, especially those in the photography space, since that's where you come from? What kind of advice would you give them?
Oh, man, I have so much. I would say for people starting out, I think people get into a lot of moms tend to have kids and get into photography to photograph their kids. Then they realize this is a great way to also make money. So they start working with their friends' kids. And it's a little similar to what I did, except my degree was in it. So I knew I wanted to do something with it. I think a lot of people get into it thinking it's going to be really easy. And sometimes it feels really easy, especially at first when you're not a primary breadwinner or the sole provider of your family. You're just trying to really supplement or be creative or have an outlet. There's a lot of stuff that comes with it. There's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of like hidden things that people just don't realize at first. Like making sure your insurance coverage is up to par, storage for your digital files. I take that stuff really seriously. I charge, I'm not the most expensive photographer in my area, but I charge enough that like I take it as a high responsibility to keep track of my stuff. You would be shocked at the amount of horror stories you hear of so-and-so lost my newborn photographs, and that can't be replicated. I would definitely say if you're getting started, working with other people, maybe mentoring under people that are in your area is a really great way to kind of outsource they'll be like networking and learning under somebody. And kind of learning about the ins and outs of running a business for taxable purposes. A lot of photographers still struggle with that, not paying proper taxes, not claiming stuff. All of that stuff can kind of come back and bite you later. So making sure you're fully covered in all aspects of it. I think that working with another photographer for me, it is the most important resource I think I have is working with people who are living the experience of it in the real moment and understanding the struggle. And it's not all just showing up and, blowing bubbles and photographing people. It's way more complicated. And especially if you want to make it a profitable business, it goes way deeper than just that surface stuff. But I think for people who have been doing it for a while, they probably know all those struggles already. And I think making sure you have your group of people, your support system, it's such a huge kind of resource to work with other entrepreneurs, even if maybe they're not in your field, but they're small business owners. Just having people that aren't your partners or your spouses to really bounce that stress off of, or those ideas. It's just invaluable to have a community that can support you and give you advice and tell you when you're doing something wrong.
Oh, exactly. I love that you just said that. Yeah. I think that's probably the most valuable thing that I've realized being in business is just having that community and that support and that group that you can go to. Like you said, kind of brainstorm and bounce ideas off of. But I do want to kind of go back a little bit. And you said you've worked with so many photographers over this past several years. Is there any one particular photographer that you'd really like to thank at this time?
There's so many. I mean, I personally use a local photographer. I used to. My friend that I just met with this morning, Lynn Terry, she does a lot of pet photography and she does similar stuff to me. She's a photographer that I've known for decades. I actually took over her position at my very first studio job. She was there before me. Oh, wow. So I met her, fresh out of school. I was 24, 25. So about 20 years now. Famous wise, or more popular wise, Caitlin James is another really big one. She's a natural light photographer. Do you know her?
I haven't personally, I don't recognize that name, but I'm sure that some of our audience members will recognize.
She's got a huge following. She's a juggling mom. She does weddings and portraits, lovely work. She does workshops now. She'll go around with somebody who's filming a real life wedding, and it's just such a great resource for people who are so freaked out to go do it themselves, because she's telling you exactly, like, it is not fun or pretty, or sometimes you get the ugliest hotel rooms, and she makes the stuff look magical. And to see the behind the scenes is really fabulous. And
it's like the reality versus Instagram kind of thing.
Yes. And I think on a non-photography level, people who have helped me, well, Jasmine Starr has been great too, but good old Brene Brown, Glennon Doyle. I love their, I listen to a lot of their podcasts and just them supporting women in a way that teaches you your own boundaries and your own kind of, your positives and your negatives and how to work on those in a more, therapeutic way. I think having that is just as important as having the people in your life. Is, I personally can't afford therapy for myself. I pay for it for other people in my family. So having those sorts of resources at your disposal are just invaluable. So there's so many I could list off. God, that's a great question that I didn't prepare for because there's so many over time.
Yeah. Sorry, I kind of threw that one at you last minute.
It's okay.
Well, you made that comment and I was like, I wonder if there's anybody specific.
Yeah, I mean, I could literally keep going. There's so many people that Dan Dreyfus is who I learned from. I mean, there's just famous photographers and geez, on Instagram now, I just love really creative people. And so whenever people are doing stuff, I'm like super inspired by it.
Well, that kind of brings me to my next question. So what are your big plans for 2023 for your photography business?
Well, I just wrote a small post about it on my Instagram.
Awesome. I'll have to go check that out.
Kind of embrace the chaos. I want less chaos, but like it kind of accept the messiness and the imperfections. That's kind of where I was going through within my Instagram post was, it is not as you see it on social media. It is, disheveled all over the place. I was in the studio with Sarah and my gear was everywhere. I normally never have my gear everywhere. And I was like, wow, is this how 2023 is going already? Like, it's just kind of this like upheaval of things, but man, we created some great stuff. So in the end, it doesn't really matter, but
that is so exciting. I can't wait to check out your Instagram and check out the photos that you took of Sarah.
I've always posted a little bit on Instagram. I'm just such a visual person and the way it's laid out is very visual. So I guess really, we just want to tell everybody where they can find you. I know that your website is belovelyphotography.com. I'll make sure to put that in the chat. I'm all over the place. I have a blog from way back when that sometimes I update. I don't write anything anymore because nobody reads anything. But yeah, I have a Tumblr blog from way back in the day. I'm kind of all over the place, but I'd say the main way people find me is word of mouth. But if you want to see what I do and a deeper collection of what I do, my website definitely has a lot of samples. Instagram, you can just see clips and bits. Facebook has a lot if you're my age and older.
So real quick before we get off, what does your ideal client look like? Like we talked about you doing families and branding. So you work with other entrepreneurs, special events, but like who's your ideal client?
In a nutshell, it's families, events, people, usually lively, happy events. Sometimes it'll be something not so much, but like I've photographed funerals, but more of the people at the funeral hanging out, talking, group shots. But my ideal client, I'd say, is somebody who has looked at my work extensively and they like what I do. They've seen samples. They don't want anything else. They know what they're going to get. I have a very loud and boisterous personality. So my ideal client kind of may know that about me already. And usually if I'm shooting their wedding, we've met or we've Zoomed or we've had phone calls. I have so much experience in so many areas of photography that I can deal with a lot of different scenarios. But yeah, my ideal client doesn't scoff at my prices and wants me for me and what I do. I can't do what anybody else does. People have asked me about filters and how I make things look this way. And I'm like, I show you what you are amplified through a lovely camera and a very expensive gear. And I'll do some black and white, but I try to make things timeless and classic and also like bold, bright, fun. We have a lot of fun at my shoots. I'm usually dressed really casually and sweating my butt off and like laying on the floor and climbing trees. So, they have to want that and know that that's what they're going to get because I cannot fake this.
All right, JJ. Well, I have enjoyed meeting with you.
So great.
I'm so excited that you made it today, and I can't wait for everybody to hear more about your business. I hope you have a wonderful 2023, and we'll talk later.
It was so great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. Have a great day.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.